My name is Norm Volsky, your host, and this is the Digital Health Heavyweights Podcast. The Digital Health Heavyweights Podcast with your host, Norm Volsky. Today, it is my pleasure to be able to introduce the founder and CEO of Hinge Health, Dan Perez. Not only that, but I'd like to say he's also a friend and a great favorite in the digital health industry. So, Dan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Norm.
Yeah, my pleasure. So Dan, something I don't know a whole lot about, even though we've worked together for a long time, and I doubt our listeners know much about, is really, what you did in your career prior to Hinge. Can you kind of walk us through, Dan pre-Hinge, post-college?
Sure, yeah. Well, I grew up in Utah. I was born in Miami, but I grew up in Utah, and then actually always wanted to be a doctor. And so I did do medical school for a little while. I left with somewhat less than a medical degree, unfortunately, and decided to then try my hat at a PhD in the medical sciences. And I went to the UK and I dabbled in trying to do a PhD in specifically in biochemistry. That's where I met my co-founder Gabe, who was also doing his PhD. We were not very good PhD students because we were more focused on entrepreneurship than academics, and we figured we could have a bigger impact via entrepreneurship than working in a lab. And so we started, founding some companies together during our PhDs. And Hinge Health is actually the third company me and my co-founder have run together. And we always knew we wanted to continue to work together and have success in entrepreneurship. And sometimes as entrepreneurs, you gotta keep chipping away and
That's great.
Putting some shots on goal. And we got lucky with Hinge Health.
Well, a lot of skill involved there, but just out of curiosity, what were the other couple companies before Hinge?
We founded one, it was like a student club while I was at Oxford. He had finished in Cambridge and he was in Imperial. It was just connecting academics and industry folks in the biotech space. It was never going to be a big startup, but we were able to bring it up. We always ran it like a company. We brought it to a little over $1 million of revenue, which is not bad for PhD students doing it on a part-time. And that's where we thought, okay, maybe we could do this enterprise sales thing, and it worked out pretty well. And then the other one was it's called Marbler, where we tried to commercialize academic IP. Most academic IP doesn't get commercialized. We realized as we were running Marbler, there's a good reason a lot of that IP doesn't get commercialized. It shouldn't have been filed in the first place. And so Marbler gave us both OBR and Marbler gave us a really good perspective on entrepreneurship. One, closing enterprise deals, really understanding how you deliver value to an enterprise as well as the end user who might not personally be purchasing the product, but is still using the product and is fundamental to the service. And with Marbler, how to raise capital, how to get press, how to build a software product, and we weren't too successful with Marbler when it came to revenue, though, and so we were probably better at getting press than revenue, and that was a key learning when we came to Hinge, and we've kind of kept our heads down with Hinge and just focus on building the business, and we don't focus as much on the press.
Yeah, you flipped those quite well, so good job on that. So I know the answer to this, but maybe many of the viewers do not. What inspired you and Gabriel to start Hinge? Based on your backgrounds, like your own personal stories.
Great question. So after our first two startups, me and Gabe, when Marbler was failing, we still had a little bit of capital in the bank to pay for our rent. So we hadn't been evicted yet. So we just went to the whiteboard and started thinking, okay, well, what's next? We never decided, or it was never on our thought, well, let's go our separate ways and, God forbid, go work for McKinsey or something. That wasn't on our minds. We went straight to the whiteboard and said, well, what startup are we going to do next? And we both had a history in healthcare and particularly a background. Both of us had personal backgrounds in musculoskeletal conditions. I broke my arm, my leg when I was younger, had about 12 months of rehab. Gabe tore his ACL when he was in Cambridge, had about 12 months of rehab as well. And we appreciated the rehab that we got, but we also found it to be extremely onerous and challenging for us to do. But very appreciative of the clinicians who helped us. And we thought, well, gosh, is there a way to use technology to better deliver care in musculoskeletal conditions? And being the good scientists that we were, or at least we thought we were, we went and we started looking at the literature, the clinical literature. And the clinical literature was really, really strong on what best practice care for musculoskeletal conditions should be. There wasn't a lot of controversy. There still isn't too much controversy on what conservative management care should be and what should be delivered up front. There's always some variation, but directionally, clinicians are pretty consistent. You want to deliver some physical therapy, exercise therapy, weight loss guidance if the patient is overweight, particularly for load-bearing joints, behavioral health support and education to help them understand their condition. And none of that is necessarily easy to deliver for the healthcare system. It doesn't reimburse very much. It's quite onerous for the patient to deliver, or to receive, I should say, 3, 4, 5 PT visits over the course of a week. I mean, that's a lot of missed work you might have.
A lot of driving to and from.
Get them childcare, pay copays. And so we thought, I bet technology could deliver this more efficiently. Me and Gabe thought that. And from speaking then to other folks who were being impacted, particularly enterprise customers who were being impacted, we realized that they also were looking for better solutions for MSK. And so we realized from our offices in London that we're pushing against an open door. And we then, early on decided to just go all in on Hinge Health and move the commercial aspects of the business forward along with the technical aspects of the business forward at the same time.
Yep, love that. You and Gabe, completely created a market category that did not exist before. So, it was really fun to watch that growth. Talk to me a little bit about the early years, some of the first successes, some of the first customers.
Yeah, so we were founded on October 1st, 2014 in Camden Town, London. And we spent some time really trying to iterate the business model. One of the key pieces of advice I received as an early entrepreneur, and I think other entrepreneurs should think about as well, particularly in healthcare, but really any startup that's developing a new piece of technology, is you've got to move the commercial bits forward along with the technology. You can't just sit in a silo and just, I'm going to be in the lab and develop the technology, and one day the technology will be ready and then I'll sell it. And there's certain situations where that works, and that's fine. I suppose if you're building a rocket, wait 10 years until the rocket works and then sell it. But that wasn't what we were doing, and we were figuring out what the business model would be. And so we went to selling as soon as we had a prototype ready, which was within weeks. And we didn't wait years to really trying to figure out who would buy this product. And we went through that first year, we went through several cycles. Like, is this, could we add the most amount of care post-operatively for patients for rehab? Because there's many different situations where you would need physical therapy or rehab. And we quickly realized that there wasn't a lot of ROI in post-operative rehab, and it was very difficult as well to sell within the UK. We were going to be 50 years old and run out of all of our money by the time the NHS, finished an RFP for us. That's a, slightly exaggeration, but the timescales for government contracts, whether it's US or UK or Canada, could be a lot longer. And realized from London, we stumbled across a concept of self-insured employers, because we just kept iterating and looking at different business models, and realized, wow, this employer is fully at, or this entity is fully at risk. They're assuming the full cost of musculoskeletal conditions, and the best position to be in as a digital MSK company is actually pre-surgical, because that's where you have the biggest impact on the patient outcomes, on their experience, and particularly on the financial outcomes for the payer who is at risk for these costs. And so it was almost like this Goldilocks position was to position the rehab product as a pre-surgical, ideally rehab product, one that would actually help avoid the surgery in the first place. And that meant we had to find some early enterprise customers in the US. And what we also found from London was it was easier to schedule appointments with enterprise customers in the US from London than it was to schedule appointments with enterprise customers in the UK from London. And we quickly realized there's this appetite in the US, and I'm American, Gabriel's German, but I've been living in the UK for almost 7 years at that point, that the appetite for early stage innovation, even at the enterprise level, is so high in America. Like the competition is fierce in America, and their willingness to adopt new solutions to gain an edge, it is just different in the US. And for whatever reason, a lot of digital MSK companies ended up being founded in Europe. So some of our some of our peers and sparring partners in digital MSK were founded in Europe, and they also then followed suit and came over to America and realized this is where the battle was. And the early adopters were in America, and now I think a lot of us are looking overseas now that other countries are starting to explore digital health more seriously. But this was really where the epicenter was, and so those early days were about getting early enterprise customers. And it was me and Gabe were the salesmen. We were traveling back and forth between the UK and America. Gabe eventually moved here, and the biggest thing was me and Gabe had to close our first 10 enterprise deals. That was really important for us to feed that feedback from the customer back to the R&D team and really understand the voice of the customer. And I'd encourage every entrepreneur to, whether you know sales or not, to try to be pretty well involved in your first 5 to a dozen sales. I think it's really imperative, if at all possible, because it's going to teach you so much about the customer. And I've stayed involved. I continue to lead the commercial team through 100 million ARR before handing it off, I should say, to Jim Pursley, who's just transformed it and taken it to a whole nother level. But it's really important, I think, for founders to be close to the customer.
Yeah, I'm getting so much nostalgia just thinking about this. I actually have a funny story for you that you definitely don't know. But, in terms of, a lot of people always ask me, like, what does a founder need to have to be successful? You've seen a lot of these companies be successful, and it ultimately comes down to, can the founder really evangelize the mission? And if they're able to do that, then they've got a really good chance of success. So when Jim, who used to be a client of mine when he was at Livongo, he was CCO at the time, they were my top client at that moment. So, Jim called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, Norm, I need a favor." I said, "Okay, Jim, what can I help with?" He said, "Well, mentoring a couple of, young entrepreneurs. They've got this cool idea in musculoskeletal," which I had no idea what that even meant. But I'm like, okay, cool. Sounds fun. And he said, "Can you talk to him?" I'm like, "Yeah, happy to, Jim. I'll do anything for you. Tell me to jump. You tell me to jump. I say how high." So I got on the phone with you and Gabriel. I did zero research going into that, by the way, because Jim was keeping me so busy and I had a lot of different clients to please. So I got on that call, and you and Gabriel told me what the value prop was. And within 5 minutes, I went from like slumping in my chair, just like feet up on my desk, to like this. I was like, oh my God, I just heard the future. Like, this makes so much sense. So immediately I, kind of got real engaged and, started getting in my sales mode as opposed to just listening mode. And I remember it like a thunderbolt. Like, I know exactly where I was sitting. I knew exactly like what that like emotional feeling was, where I was just like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. And I would bet on these folks. Like, I'm going to work my butt off to make sure I find the right people for these folks, because I believe in Dan and Gabe. And I believe in their mission, and I think their value prop makes just so much sense. So sorry to let the cat out of the bag that I didn't prepare for our first meeting, but I've prepared for you ever since.
Well, thank you, and it's we've had phenomenal hires that you've helped place, because that's the other thing. Like, when it comes to enterprise sales, you've got to, particularly when it's long sales cycles, you've really got to put the right people in the seat, and you helped us put the right people in the seat, and so many are all still here, and our main leaders on our commercial team are still here that you helped place, and so it's just, you really have to invest heavily in that. Some of the worst, you asked me, some of the early days, but I would say a lot of early stage entrepreneurs also get terrible advice, and some of the worst advice I got was actually from an investor, and luckily he didn't invest, and I didn't listen to his advice, was that, oh, just hire your team really fast, and particularly your sales team, and if they don't work, just fire them. And I was like, gosh, that is an awful piece of advice, to just, hire somebody so they leave what might have been a stable job prior to you hiring them, and if they don't work out, just let them go. And it's like, that's bad for you, bad for the customer, and certainly bad for your employee. And we really worked hard with you to get the right people, put them in the seat, and they're still with us.
And you had an incredibly high bar. You definitely wanted a very specific person, and, it was more work on the front end, but, it was well worth it on the back end, for all of us. So, it's very much rewarding to see the success you guys have had, some of the success some of these, folks that you mentioned have had in their careers has just, been an awesome thing to see. So a lot of, the listeners on this are, entrepreneurs that are much earlier, than where Hinge is. There's only few peers you have at this point. And then there's many people who, always have this idea of, hey, one day I want to be an entrepreneur. I do have an idea. At some point, I'm going to chase that idea and start my own company. Can you walk the audience through like how you got your first handful of customers?
Sure. Yeah. Um, our very first customer was Vail Resorts, and they were our first customer win. And we went to a benefits conference. I went to the benefits conference. It was in Vegas. The head of benefits, head of total rewards, was giving a talk. I emailed him the night before. I'd like to come to your talk, and if you have any time to chat afterwards. I then approached him after his talk. He'd received my email, but he had flown in just that night before and was flying out immediately thereafter. He was very busy. He was extremely kind and professional and said, "But we do have an issue with musculoskeletal. Do you mind, tell a little bit about your product?" But he had to go to the airport, so I walked with him, through the conference portion, and then he was like, "Great," and I was like, "Well, let's keep talking." So we continued to walk through the casino, got to the escalator, kept walking. At some point, we got to the taxi stand, and he said, "You're not getting in the taxi with me." And so,
Knowing you, I thought you bought a flight ticket and flew with him.
gone into the taxi and gone. If we could keep the conversation over it, but they were extremely thoughtful around their musculoskeletal strategy. Extremely thoughtful on knowing that improving the experience for our employees, because the mission of Vail Resorts and one of the vision is to give their customers the experience of a lifetime. And they imbibe that vision and that mission at Vail Resorts, and they know to deliver to their customer the experience of a lifetime that they've got to have happy and healthy employees. And it's not just about looking at the dollars and cents. It is about making sure that our folks on the front line are healthy, are not in pain, so that they could deliver the experience of a lifetime for our customers. And that's why they've been one of the best performing companies in the hospitality industry. And they were phenomenally thoughtful in terms of their evaluation. They did a pilot initially before rolling us out to their full population, and they've been a customer for us for 7 years, and we've been able to grow together. And they continue to acquire additional resorts, and the business is doing phenomenally well. And so that was our first customer. And me and Gabriel, as mentioned, we had to close our first 10. We then hired our VP of enterprise sales, Erin Wilson, who is still with us, and she's been phenomenal. And there's always that sensitive moment when for an enterprise sales company when you bring in a new leader and you have sales that close without the founder being involved at all. And Erin, got up to speed very, very quickly, and then soon we saw that she was closing deals, and I didn't even so much as send an email to that customer or was involved at all. And that was a phenomenal transition moment for us, and she helped us build out the team. Today we've got a lot more customers than back then. We crossed 1,000 last year, almost at this point last year, which was really exciting. We're accessible to over 25 million people over the U.S., and now 4 in 5 employers who've purchased a digital MSK solution have chosen us. 90% of health plans who work with a digital MSK product have chosen us as their preferred or exclusive MSK partner. We've got Land O'Lakes and Salesforce and Self-Insured Schools of California, U.S. Food, Southern Company, State of New Jersey, Verizon, and more. It's been really great. It's been really fun.
That's amazing. You always remember your first handful of customers, that help you get to where you're going. And I can, say with a lot of, just really good feelings that you were certainly one of mine. So appreciate that. You've had a ton of success. No one's questioning that, but it's never as easy as it looks. There's always challenges. There's always roadblocks. So talk to me about like any large challenges you remember overcoming over those early years.
There's a lot. There was a lot of challenges. When we weren't selling the 10th TV. We were selling essentially the first TV, and so we were trying to build a market and get people to believe in a product class that hadn't really existed yet. And even investors weren't sure if this product class was a product class to invest in. And one of our biggest challenges was just overcoming the conventional wisdom of what's the best way to treat muscle and joint pain. And we have a saying that says movement is medicine. And when you have chronic pain, a lot of people want to stay in bed, or they think that you should just go to in-person care. And I'm a firm believer in in-person care. I think in-person care will always be here to stay, and we want to help complement in-person care. But how could a digital health solution fit into that? And it took a lot of education of the market, and we worked really hard to educate the market on our outcomes, on why this is good for your members, and how we could help save costs as well. And so that was probably the biggest early challenge for when you're creating a category, is to convince the enterprise customer, particularly an enterprise, to believe that this category is worth investing in and that you're going to have staying power. A lot of our early customers were thinking, well, am I going to deploy you to 10,000 of my members or 100,000 of my members? Are you even going to be in business in a year? And it's a conservative buyer, so we had to overcome that, and I think it made us stronger and forced us to have a really good message, and we were able to blaze the trail so that others could then also enter into digital MSK.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I do remember the quote I used to always say when I was talking to candidates was, Hinge can reduce surgery utilization by about 60-ish%, maybe 2/3 even. How long did it take for you to feel comfortable enough with the data to make claims that bold?
Great point. So we were seeing substantial reductions in pain, very early on, and we're now seeing about 2 in 3 people up front who say they want to pursue an elective surgery, then do not want to pursue an elective surgery after Hinge Health. And what's exciting is that, or whether exciting is the right word, but what's notable about MSK is that so many of the surgeries in musculoskeletal conditions are elective surgeries. If you fall off a ladder and you break your ankle, you might not have a choice. You probably have to have surgery on your ankle, or if you get in a car accident and have a compound fracture, you might have to have surgery to fix that. But that is the minority of surgeries in MSK. Most surgeries in MSK are joint replacements or arthroscopies. These are scheduled surgeries where the patient says, essentially, my pain is too much. I would like to have surgery to address my pain. And they're going to surgery because of their pain. And so if you could give them a compelling non-surgical option for that pain, their willingness to go through surgery or need to pursue surgery for that pain has largely dissipated. And so it's really, could we give patients a compelling non-surgical option? And we're experiencing a very large reduction in pain for people going through our program, a very large improvement in functional outcomes, including improvement in mental health outcomes. We're improving depression and anxiety by about 50% from baseline for people going through our program. Because if your pain goes away and you're suddenly able to move and walk with your spouse and play with your kids and get a good night's rest because you're not shifting position to find somewhere that doesn't hurt your shoulder or your back, you're probably going to be less depressed and be less likely to have a mood disorder. And so we're seeing these phenomenal outcomes very early on, and our customers were seeing the financial outcomes as well pretty early on, because we're talking about $50,000 knee surgeries or $80,000 back surgeries. The costs add up real fast.
Oh yeah, definitely. Tell me how the platform has changed over the last 9 years or so.
Oh boy, yeah, it's changed a lot. We pioneered using wearable technology to deliver musculoskeletal care, and we started with just a knee program. Then we added additional joints thereafter. Now we cover every body and every body part essentially in our product suite. And we started with a more limited care team, and now we have a full suite of a care team of physical therapists, physicians, nurses, health coaches, nutritionists on staff, because we know musculoskeletal requires really a comprehensive care team. And we've just launched a women's pelvic health program catered for women struggling with pelvic pain and pelvic floor dysfunctions. And it's a nationally accessible program, which is really exciting because very small minority of physical therapists specialize in pelvic floor disorders or pelvic health, and it could be weeks and weeks to get an appointment with a pelvic floor specialist. We also have a wearable device called our Hinge Health Enzo, which delivers high-frequency impulse therapy, which we didn't have even 3 years ago, which delivers high-frequency impulse therapy, and really some of our members say it just helps melt their pain away, which is particularly helpful for folks who might be in too much pain to get active, or having a flare-up of their pain, and this has really helped people not have to miss work, be able to work out, even when their back was giving them some pain. We launched Hinge Connect recently, about 2 years ago, which allows us to integrate with about 1 million+ provider EMRs across the U.S., and so we could both share data with a patient's primary care physician, their permission, but also be able to integrate directly with their primary care physician with their permission as well, so we could have more coordinated care. And so we just continue to invest overall into our product. We've not taken anything for granted. While we started with wearable sensors, we're now transitioning towards computer vision, so we could just use the front-facing camera on your phone to accurately recapitulate your motion in space. You could do your exercises, again, right from the comfort of your own home with extremely high accuracy and fidelity, the same amount of accuracy as some Hollywood motion picture labs. And we've also launched house calls earlier this year, which we're really excited about. I'm a firm believer in in-person care, by the way. I've been doing digital health for 9 years in October, and I tell you there is a limit to what software and connected hardware could do. And I think there will always be a role for in-person care, no matter how far in the future we get. And I think we should have more integration between digital and in-person care overall.
Could you expand on why a member would need both remote physical therapy and in-person care, and you want to provide both?
We do, yeah, absolutely. So look, our program is not a one-size-fits-all. Different members have unique needs and preferences, and some might be used to a more traditional experience and have different expectations for their care. So in-person care complements digital services because, one, some people just prefer to start with an in-person appointment, right? Some people feel like they would be more comfortable with an in-person evaluation. Some of our members are older, where Medicare Advantages are one of our fastest growing, if not our fastest growing segment of our business. And for older patients, some of our enterprise customers would prefer an in-person evaluation as well as an in-person orientation to our digital program to onboard them and give them more faith in how to use the technology and ensure that they're comfortable with using the technology. And that's some of the key roles that in-person care can play. And there's just certain things you could do better in person still than you can digitally. That being said, overwhelmingly, most of our patients only need our digital care. By far, we've really invested substantially in our technology and in our ability to deliver digital care, and so the overwhelming majority still could go through our their full musculoskeletal care journey with just our digital care program. But we know for those who do need to be escalated to in-person care, we wanted to have that capability, and we're the only digital MSK company with that capability, and we're leaning into it. We're available in just a few metros right now, and our aim is to be available in the top 100 metros in the U.S. over the next 18 to 24 months.
That's fantastic. You've had a ton of success. What are any failures you've learned from, or greatest lessons you've learned as you've scaled Hinge over the last 8+ years?
It's certainly around hiring. You've got to get it right. No matter what industry you're in, what product you're selling, you should be a domain expert in your category, but you should also be a domain expert in hiring. And you've got to really take it very seriously. So, me and my co-founders rally around Series B, where you realize, we can't just be great at digital MSK or software development. We've got to be very, very good at bringing in phenomenal people up and down the organization, and try to be very good up front around what you're looking for, scorecarding every role, working with great recruiting partners who have high standards, and try to get it right up front. Because if you get the hiring right up front, then downstream HR issues are much less likely to exist. And when you do get it wrong, it's okay. It doesn't mean you're a bad person or they're a bad person, but do try to act with haste. I've regretted hiring some people. I've never regretted when we've had to part with somebody, right? And it's good for them as well, because it might just not have been a good fit, and they could go off and flourish and spread their wings in another organization. And so one of the other things I've learned as I've gotten older is always be generous with severance. It's just good karma, and you should, if it didn't work out, again, there's been vanishingly few instances of somebody just overtly not showing up to work, or trying to commit fraud or stealing from the company. That's not really the reason people get fired from, at least not from Hinge Health when we part ways. It's just that there might not have been a fit. And so another lesson that I've learned is always get good severance.
That's great advice. What other advice would you give potential entrepreneurs before they start a business, just in general, and then specifically in our space?
Talk to customers. I think too many entrepreneurs, especially early stage entrepreneurs, they've got this great idea on the back of a napkin, but they don't share their ideas with others because they're afraid someone's going to steal their napkin. Ain't nobody going to steal your napkin, okay? So talk to customers, and even at this stage, or as you're developing new products, new capabilities, sometimes it's uncomfortable even for myself to say, okay, this concept is still too early stage, it's not fleshed out. Should we be sharing it with some customers? We do, and we did it at our customer advisory board a couple months ago back in June, and it was one of the ideas that I've been percolating, and we got really good constructive feedback, and it felt a bit uncomfortable in the moment. But looking back, I was like, wow, I'm so happy I get the feedback early rather than late, particularly if you have customers who really care about you. You want to get their voice early. And we also structure all of our new product releases in a PR FAQ format, similar to Amazon. And we'll go through 11 or 12 drafts of our PR FAQs. Like we'll make sure we've thought about every noun, every verb, every piece of punctuation in our press releases. I could tell some of our competitors do not look at that. I find speaking to customers early is a great idea for all entrepreneurs, and as well as other people who give you advice on your product. But customers are the best to think about and to get some feedback from, and then trying to structure your announcement or what you're launching in the form of a press release, because then you could structure what is that value prop to the customer that I'm trying to convey, whether it's a end user or to an enterprise customer. Why would they care? And if you're struggling to figure out why they would care, then maybe they won't care.
Yeah.
About something else. And it's helped us move away from M&A opportunities or bolt-on acquisitions that we thought looked kind of neat in the moment, but then we couldn't craft a compelling PR FAQ to show or convince ourselves why our customers would care. And we share these with select customers, and they give us feedback, and they'll be like, this doesn't make sense, or this bullet is actually what I most care about. You should move this forward or flesh it out. It's really great feedback. So talk to customers, even if you get constructive feedback and it feels uncomfortable. That's good medicine.
Yeah, no, it's great advice, and I've always appreciated your direct communication and candor. That's what allowed us to do good work with you guys for many years, was just our ability to be honest with each other. Be very direct. I'm like, hey, you're not going to hurt my feelings, and you certainly didn't. But again, it's very important that you ask customers what they like that you're doing and what they don't like or what's missing, because you don't want to have to ask yourself after they've left you, hey, what could I have done better? It's better to just know it up front. So that's really good advice for anyone, really.
Or invest in a product and a product launch that you think is the coolest thing ever, and then your customers are like, actually, I'm not really interested in this. And you could have spent your resources developing a better new product or something like that.
What are crucial traits a startup founder or founding team have to have? Like, obviously, there are many differences. You don't have the same style as some of the other really successful founders, but what do you and the other ones that have kind of gotten to that unicorn status or gotten to that leader of a market category area, what do you have in common, do you think?
Well, I'd say beyond just unicorn categories, so many people lately have gone to unicorn category. I'd say staying power. Those entrepreneurs who have staying power, who continue to be successful and pass multiple milestones, have a few key traits. One is just you got lucky. Your timing was good. Yet you nailed maybe product market fit earlier than you might have otherwise done. And so luck always has a role to play. And I think founders should never discount the role that fortune plays in their success. And certainly we've gotten very lucky at Hinge Health. But the other bit that I've seen, or other feature of many founders that have had staying power, is that they are curious and want to improve themselves. And so they are constantly trying to scale themselves or pick up new skills or speak to new people or read books. And for myself, I try to read about 30 books a year and at least 2 to 3 a month. And because you as an entrepreneur, you as a leader at a 4-person seed stage startup, your role is going to be different than when you're at a 20-person Series A startup, than at a 100-person Series B, or at a 1,500 or 2,000 person Series E company. And so if you want that staying power, you've got to know the type of leader you've got to be at each stage, and some of the challenges are going to be around the corner. And so I try to continually read, and not just business books. I read, other books as well. But I think, and as well, just try to learn. Try to learn from other entrepreneurs. Try to get a coach. Try to learn from your colleagues, especially from your colleagues. Don't assume you have all the answers. And so that's been really important. And as you grow, really work hard to build out a phenomenal executive team, one that you trust, that you empower. That is really, really high bar, because the leaders are going to be the pace setters for any organization. And so on top of scaling yourself, make sure you continue to scale your leadership team. And that might mean, you have to swap some people out or hire above some people. Hopefully, if you hire above somebody, they don't leave the company. They stay with the company, because they're phenomenal culture bearers. But if you bring in a great leader, they'll hopefully keep people there with you and help develop your talent. But some of the best decisions that happen at Hinge Health, in fact, overwhelming majority of the best decisions that happen at Hinge Health, are not decisions by me and Gabe anymore. The decisions by the other leaders that we've been able to hire.
That's fantastic. And what I've admired about you for a long time, and what I just really enjoy, is your humility. Like, you have every reason to be, very proud of your accomplishment, which I know you are, but, you don't broadcast it. And I, couldn't be more, just in awe of that, in that alone. And it's, really, really nice to see. It's kind of rare these days, in the world of self-promotion, you try to downplay your accomplishments. So you mentioned what crucial traits are for people who are founding members of companies. What are the crucial traits of the next wave of hires? When you're talking about when you were in your early years at seed stage, at Series A, like, what skill sets and what characteristics were you looking for in people that now you see was really important and was going to really make the difference between being able to contribute early, as opposed to, hey, like, this person's great, but they might not be the right fit for us at this stage? Because I think you guys nailed that. And, I think a lot of folks would like to know why.
Good point. Yeah, even I sometimes reflect back on it, and undoubtedly we got lucky with certain hires and got lucky with certain people who declined our offers. And I look back and I'm like, wow, that person would not have been a good fit. I thought they would have been, because they were so experienced in the space. And so a few things. When you're early stage, you're going to need a few more generalists who could wear a lot of hats and are comfortable with ambiguity and vagueness on role definition, and are willing to pick up a lot of different tasks that need to get done. And it's murkier. The further along you get, and the larger the company gets, you're going to become increasingly specialized. You're going to go from having one HR person who's handling all HR issues, all employee onboarding, all hiring, to dedicated hiring team, dedicated HR team, and like further specialization on a comp expert, etc. And so every team gets more specialized as it grows, and then you have to understand that trait and be. But when you're early stage, you're going to want some generalists, but hopefully the generalists you hire early on, yes, they're hardworking, they have good judgment, they can move fast, they're clearly somebody willing to join a Series Seed or Series A company has a larger risk appetite than somebody joining a 1,500 person company that's already at $500 million of revenue or whatnot. And so it's the risk appetite needs to be a bit higher for those coming early stage. And some of the key near misses we had were looking at some folks coming from like management consultancy or these big companies who had never been in an early stage startup and didn't really know how these worked. And so I was very happy that our first head of sales or this or that didn't end up being somebody who had just left Bain or McKinsey after 7 or 10 years, right? Because some of them were inbound and interested in it, and it doesn't mean that they can't be successful. Many are, but I don't think it would have been successful for us. And so I'd say that's really important. Early stage generalists who are willing or are comfortable with ambiguity, but also willing to learn, because a lot of our early hires have continued to develop so well. I mentioned Erin Wilson. She's still with us. Some of our biggest deals have been closed by her, and she is she is not the Erin Wilson we hired 5 or 6
Yeah.
years ago. She is
She came from ed tech, didn't she?
and she came from ed tech, and which I could touch upon that in that, an experienced me would not have hired Erin Wilson, who was our first VP of sales, because like, oh, she doesn't have any experience in healthcare, doesn't have any experience in this, and it was the naive me who hired her, and it was a great decision. And so,
Yeah.
sometimes experience leads you in the wrong direction. This time, my inexperience ended up leading me in the right direction, and she's still phenomenal. But I'll tell you what, she's a lot better now than even when she was there. She's continuing to scale herself. Chris Forrest, who joined us on our commercial team, continued to scale, leads a huge team as well now. Steve Pompili joined our client success team. Really, he was doing almost everything, even our billing when he joined. He leads a very large team now, some of our most impressive enterprise accounts, and he is, much better now than he ever was even earlier on. And so some of these early employees, hopefully they also have this appetite to continue to improve themselves and develop their careers. And these early employees, if you get them right, they're great investments for yourself, and it's a great investment for them as well, because hopefully their equity packages go up. But so that's the other characteristic of early employees, people who want to learn, want to get better. Margaret Dowling, she joined us early on as a health coach. She now runs a 400-person team here at Hinge Health, and continues to get better and better every year.
Love that. I'm leading into something where you might just say, well, everything I just said before, but what are you most proud of, in building Hinge with Gabe and all these other folks you mentioned?
Well, ultimately the impact of the product's had, and it's all in service of that. It's like we could have built a great team, a great culture, a bunch of revenue, but if we were selling cigarettes, I wouldn't be that happy about it, right?
Yeah.
And so we are really helping people every day be able to improve their pain so that they could just get on with their lives. We get stories, literally dozens and dozens of stories every day that get posted in our Slack channel and coming in from our members and get sent to our enterprise customers, of folks being like little things like, hey, I could just walk down the stairs again. I mean, little activities that we take it for granted. My grandkids came over and I just bent down on the ground and I was playing with my grandkids on the ground, or after dinner, me and my husband or me and my wife used to go for walks, and I haven't been able to do it for months because of my hip pain. And guess what? After dinner yesterday, we went on a walk, and I didn't think about my pain at all. We were just holding hands and we were just walking. And those are the stories that just inspire me and inspire our team, and we're so excited about that impact that we're able to have every day with our product. And so I'm very proud of that, and of course the culture we've been able to build, that people are able to come here, unpack their bags, and I'm always so thrilled that such talented folks have decided to spend some of the most productive years of their life helping us build this company, and hopefully they could feel like they're growing as well, and the impact that they're having in the world.
The audience wants to know what's next for Hinge. You've done all of this, but what's around the corner?
Look, we are focused on MSK, musculoskeletal conditions. 1 in 2 people in America have back, pelvic, joint, or other pain in any given year, and 2 in 5 have chronic pain, and it impacts all many other aspects of our health. If your knee hurts, you can't exercise, it's going to probably lead to higher weight gain. Or it's going to increase your risk for mental health disorder. So, expect us to continue to stay focused on musculoskeletal, because, we have not yet solved it, and nobody else has, and we really want to stay focused on tackling musculoskeletal conditions. It's a huge opportunity to improve people's lives and have a big impact on the world. Expect that we're going to be making a lot more investments in AI. We have a really, really strong computer vision team. Computer vision is a subfield of AI, and we're going to focus a lot on computer vision, but other aspects and other applications of AI, because I think historically technology hasn't yet had the full potential it can have in healthcare, and so we're really excited about continuing to leverage new technological innovations to improve the member experience, improve outcomes, and reduce costs in healthcare.
Love to hear that. What are your bold predictions for digital health in the coming decade?
Well, look, I'll tell you, as I'll be celebrating our 9-year anniversary in October. I'll tell you, despite the billions that have been poured into digital health, um, billions have been poured into technology, and you walk into any hospital, there's all these beeps and all these machines whirring around. Technology hasn't really lowered costs in healthcare that much, if at all. I think technology is often used as an excuse to raise prices in healthcare. That new fancy MRI machine with double the resolution, it's an excuse to charge more money for that MRI. Because historically, there's a few reasons for that. Is that one, technology doesn't really automate a lot of healthcare. It's difficult to automate unstructured physical tasks, and technology is often used as an excuse to raise prices in healthcare. And secondly, the reimbursement regime is very rigid. And so CPT codes basically tell you how to do your job. It'll often be like a 30-minute initial evaluation with a physical therapist. It tells you how long it is, what sort of evaluation it is, and who's doing it. If a piece of technology, an AI technology, could do that same evaluation in 5 minutes, well, and the same outcomes, congratulations, you won't get paid for it, though, because the CPT code says it has to be 30 minutes. And so my prediction is that, over time, technology will start to lower costs in healthcare, but we're going to need to, folks who are tackling this field and digital health really have to think about reimbursement and automation. Technology is going to have to automate care in healthcare, or we're not going to really lower costs and improve the experience. And we have to embrace automation in healthcare, and it's going to require, really thinking about, or at least navigating, the existing reimbursement regime.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I ask every guest this as we wrap up our show. I'm a big fan of practicing what we preach. We're in the health and wellness space. How do we live, breathe, and, sleep it ourselves? So how do you, in a very stressful job, you've got, thousands of employees, you have investors who have given you hundreds of millions in funding, you've got, probably quarterly earnings you've got to hit. How do you de-stress? How do you, continue to, either exercise or de-stress or do things where keeps you on an even keel?
Great question. Look, I think any entrepreneur and anybody working in a startup should consider themselves like an elite athlete and treat their bodies like an elite athlete. So I make sure that, first of all, I try to always get 8 hours of sleep every night. None of this 4 hours of sleep or 6 hours. If I don't get my 8 hours, I'm like a zombie. So I really prioritize my sleep. I work out, 5-ish times a week. I think it's really important, both strength training and aerobics, not just aerobics. Strength training, I can tell you, was doing musculoskeletal for a decade. Strength training is the fountain of youth. And so no matter what your age is, strength training should be a part of your workout regime. It doesn't have to be every day. I take quite a few rest days, but it's really important to maintain your muscle mass. And lastly, disconnect from the internet if possible. Turn your phone off. I try to go every weekend. I'll try to put my phone on airplane mode for a Saturday and, go for a hike, either by myself or with my wife, and just be completely disconnected. I love being in the wilderness, away from, traffic and cars and city noise. I'm, really blessed to live in the Bay Area where, I could drive maybe 45 minutes away on a Saturday morning, and I'll try to be on airplane mode for 6 to 8 hours. And just, no looking at Twitter, no looking at text messages or email, and I'll have a little notebook with me with a pencil and paper, and take any notes that come to mind or any thoughts that come to mind. I'll jot them down. But that's one of the most important things that I've been doing for the last several years, is taking a digital detox nearly every weekend for several hours, and it's been one of the best things for my health, as well as making sure I get my sleep. I eat well, one salad a day, Norm, and work out.
I might implement the Saturday airplane mode. That sounds fantastic. I don't know if my daughter's going to let me, because she likes playing on my iPhone and my tablet, but I'm going to give it a shot and see how it works. And does your dog get to go on the hikes?
He does. Yep. I got a little mini Australian Shepherd. He comes on the hikes, and he typically jumps on people, and I get in trouble when it's muddy outside. But he's cute, so he gets away with it.
That's good. And then lastly, I think eating healthy is just super important. What healthy recipes do you and your wife make at home where, are staples, and maybe it gives someone the inspiration to try something new and, start adding a new meal into their regimen that hopefully is a healthy one?
Oh gosh, I don't know if for that. We do like, like tofu fried rice. We'll do that sometimes. I like to try not to eat as much meat, but always try to have a salad with like one, if not two meals every day. And she'll make some adobo chicken,
Okay.
dish. Sometimes she's actually not Filipina, but we do like adobo chicken as well. And so we'll have that. And we've switched to brown rice. So for whatever
That's your sacrifice.
that is a sacrifice. I almost never eat white rice anymore. It's a better glycemic index on the brown rice.
That's great. That's great. And lastly, something that just kind of popped into my head as we were wrapping up. You kind of like your life, growing up, like you are somewhat of the, American success story. I don't think many people know growing up, like I think you were a first generation American. Is that right? Can you just walk the audience through that as we say goodbye to you for today?
Yeah, look, my folks immigrated from Cuba. It's a brutal communist regime, and they came to America. I love America. It's been phenomenal for my family. I was born in Miami, but then my parents, because we were lower income. My dad was a dishwasher at Denny's Diner. My mom was a substitute elementary school teacher. We moved to Utah because it was a more affordable place to live. We were maybe the only Catholic Cubans on the block, but I really valued my time growing up in Utah. It was a great state, very wholesome, very safe, good education system, and I learned a lot as being an entrepreneur. I had to get a job at 10 years old at a laundromat, and then 12 years old I was delivering newspapers, and then 15 years old I was cleaning toilets in an elementary school, and then I was a waiter. So I had basically continuously employed from like 10 or 12 years old onward, and even in college always had a side hustle to pay the bills, and I thought that helped. It kind of sucked when I was in high school, and like every other kid was, their parents would buy them new shoes or new clothes, and if I needed new shoes or new clothes, I had to buy it myself. But it forced a lot of accountability on me, and I had to learn how to handle my own money and my own budget, and that's something I really value from my parents, and I'd like to instill that in my kids. My wife has said vociferously she will not let me force our kids to clean toilets, and so it's still an ongoing discussion. But my hope is that my children also clean toilets when they're 10 or 12 years old or 14. So we'll see if I could get around child labor laws, but I would like them to start on the ground level. I think it'll build character.
Yeah, no, I think your work ethic got you to where you are, and now you're a CEO and founder of a unicorn company that the entire digital health market really just envies and respects, and it's amazing what you and your company have done. So it's been a fun ride that I've been able to watch it as it's grown. And again, Dan, thank you so much for joining. This was a ton of fun. Thank you for joining us on the Digital Health Heavyweights podcast, and appreciate everyone watching.
Thank you, Norm. Thank you for all the hires. So many of your folks closed tens of millions of dollars of revenue for us, so wouldn't be here without you.
Thank you so much, Dan. It means a lot.
Talk soon, sir.
Thank you for joining. Please like, comment, and subscribe below if you enjoyed it.